Does Christianity support blind faith? I get this question quite a bit. I remember I was doing a debate and an atheist walked up to me, and I knew he was an atheist because they had a sweatshirt that said atheist on it. So I got the hint. And he said, Abdu, how do you think that faith is a valid epistemological base? It's a very fancy way of saying, how do you believe that faith is a way of knowing anything? And the answer is that it's not. Faith is not a way to know something about the world, because we misunderstand what the word faith actually is. We think in our common parlance that faith is believing something without good reason to believe it, or actually believing something even when there's good reason to deny it. And that's not what the Bible teaches faith actually is. We have to clarify what the New Testament means by faith. Common parlance might be wishful thinking, but the New Testament knows of no such definition. We look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, and we see a definition of faith as the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Now, you'll notice something right away, that the word faith and hope are used in the same sentence, that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. If faith and hope were synonymous, and hope is basically a positive wish for something to come about in the future that's positive, then they wouldn't be used in the same sentence, because faith and hope have to be different things, otherwise the sentence makes no sense. Hope is a expectation that a positive future event will occur. Faith is trusting in the one who told you it would occur. In fact, the Greek word for faith in the New Testament is the word pistis, P-I-S-T-I-S, and it means trust, or an active trust, an ongoing trust. Everyone has faith. Everyone has some form of faith. You're watching me right now on this video. Now, in an age of deep fakes and AI trickery, it could be possible that I'm not really sitting here, that this is a completely fabricated digital version of me with a voice that creates a deep fake where AI is answering the question for you. Is that possible? I guess nowadays it actually is, but given that AI is a little hinky still, the evidence is pretty much in favor of the fact that I'm actually real and I'm sitting here and I'm recording this video for you. Do you have full evidence that I'm actually here? No. But do you have enough evidence to believe that I'm actually here and doing this? Yeah, you have good reason to put your faith in the fact that I am a real person giving you a real response. You may be sitting down in a chair right now, but you likely didn't test the strength of that chair before you sat down in it. My goodness, why didn't you do that? How did you know it was going to hold up your bulk? Well, you have enough evidence, not complete, but enough evidence that the chair is likely going to hold you up, because previously when you've sat in that chair, it held you up just fine. Now, you've probably driven in a car before without testing the brakes. Now, if the brakes fail, a catastrophe could happen. You and others could die in a fiery car wreck. But did you test the brakes? No. Why? Because you had enough evidence, not complete, but you had enough evidence to trust the brakes. You had faith in those brakes. That's the kind of faith the Bible actually commends. The Bible commends trusting God, not without good reason, but based on the reasons he's already given you to trust him. You see it throughout the Bible over and over again, where God says, remember when I delivered you from the hand of Pharaoh through the various plagues. I parted the Red Sea. I delivered food for the people when they were starving in the wilderness. I brought water from a rock. Remember all of these things. And in the Christian faith, we can go back to the historical reality of the crucifixion and resurrection over and over again to trust God for what he will do based on what he already has done. The Bible never requires you and me to believe something without good evidence for believing in the one who claimed that that thing would happen. We see it all the time. Now, there's a couple instances we have to address. The Bible says that we walk by faith and not by sight. And maybe that's an instance of blind faith. But is it? It really isn't. What the Bible's talking about is taking the next step into a dimly lit path or a dark corridor, not knowing what's in front of you, but trusting that God will guide you in that uncertainty because of what's behind you, because of all the facts he's given you, because of all the reasons he's given you to trust him from what's behind you. So you walk by faith in what God has done, not necessarily always seeing what is in the future itself. So we trust God. And then the second example comes from the Gospel of John. Now Jesus is crucified and he is resurrected. And the disciples have seen him, except for the disciple named Thomas. Thomas hasn't seen him resurrected yet. And Thomas is so shaken up by the death of his leader that he refuses to believe any of the eyewitness testimony given to him by his brothers and sisters in faith who have worked with him for 3 years. And he says, I won't believe until I see and feel the scars in Jesus' body. Then I'll believe he's raised from the dead. And what does Jesus do? He comes in and he gives them the evidence he needs. Thomas drops to his knees and says, my Lord and my God. And Thomas goes off and he preaches the gospel in India, where he is eventually martyred for his faith. But Jesus says to him at that moment, you believe because you have seen, and blessed are those who believe and who have not seen. That's blind faith. Is it really? No. John Lennox points this out. What Jesus is essentially saying is this, is that, Thomas, you had all this time, 3 years of ministry along my side, seeing me perform amazing miracles, hearing me predict this moment. And you've had these brothers and sisters in faith who you have worked with for 3 years telling you they saw me with their own eyes. You had all the evidence you needed, but you needed a little more. And I gave it to you. But there will be those who will believe based on the evidence of eyewitness testimony. In other words, what Jesus is saying is that seeing is one form of evidence, but eyewitness testimony and trusting in others is another form of evidence altogether. Does the Bible commend blind faith? In no way does it do so. What it does is give you a reason to trust in the all-seeing one when you are stumbling about in the dark and the darkness has blinded you. You can trust him for what he will do based on what he has done.